Hi to everyone who doesn't know me yet. My name is Zhenya. I'm a PhD student, I'm an author, and I'm also a survivor of severe childhood trauma. And today I want to talk about my therapy journey and how it didn't really help me as much as I expected it to, and what 9 modalities actually truly helped me heal my childhood trauma when therapy couldn't. So if that sounds good, then I'll just get going. So my therapy journey. I actually was in therapy for treating my childhood trauma for approximately 3.5 years, with some like a 6 or rather 8 month period of a break because I was on an exchange semester. And I started therapy when I was in my early 20s. And it was a depth psychological therapy. So the focus was on really uncovering what events had occurred in my childhood that had traumatized me and talking about them a lot. And I don't want to go too much into details because I want today's live to be really practical. But I will say that during this long therapy journey, I discovered that continuously rehashing the details of what had occurred to me, or what had happened to me, wasn't really helping me as much as I had expected it to. And I guess that's connected to an unrealistic expectation I had entering therapy, which was that it would somehow fix me. And I discussed that in my last live, which you can rewatch. I'll link it in the description box. But essentially, what happened during therapy was that, as I mentioned, we would like rehash these stories, what had happened to me, how had I felt. And while that was very useful for helping me realize just the depth of my trauma, it didn't really help me deal with the aftermath. So it was the first step, but I treated it as if it was the only step. And during therapy, but especially after I finished therapy, I really dove into different healing modalities that I can now, in hindsight, say helped me to deal with my trauma in a much more healthy and much more efficient way than therapy did, or rather than only talk therapy did. And so those are I call them modalities, but those are really mindsets and habits that I want to dive into today. And I've grouped them in 3 different groups that I call body, mind, and soul. But really, these are all interconnected. And so they aren't in a particular order. And it's hard to me to create, it would be hard for me to create a hierarchy out of them because I feel like they all contributed to my healing journey. So are there any questions or comments about that? Otherwise, I'll just go into the first of these groups, which is the body, or the practices that deal with the body. Okay, seem to be no questions for now. So, why am I starting with the body? Because I truly believe that trauma healing happens when you heal the nervous system. And because your nervous system is a part of your body, you have to start with your body, just like your brain is a part of your body. And we now know that trauma deeply shapes your brain. So, as I said, these are not in any particular order, but the first modality, so to say, that you should really prioritize on your trauma healing journey is sleep. And this might sound very obvious because obviously you sleep all the time, right? But I mean, hopefully you do it all the time. But I found this to be extremely overlooked because we live in a world that glorifies sleep deprivation, especially sleep deprivation due to overwork. We feel like it's a badge of honor to say that we only got, 4 hours of sleep or 6 hours of sleep. And this is actually extremely damaging, because this is essentially the same thing as being proud of under eating. And we know that when that happens, we call that a disorder. And I won't go into like the depth of the importance of sleep for your physical and mental health, because I'm not a doctor, and you can read up on that. But I will just say that you need, like, your body needs proper sleep to function, and so does your brain. So when you're chronically sleep deprived, you're constantly on edge. Essentially, you're constantly in survival mode, especially if you're a trauma survivor. And the constant life in survival mode makes you much more reactive to your daily life, meaning that it's much more easy for you to find situations in which you are re-traumatized, or rather for you to take part in situations in a way that you are re-traumatized. And to make this clear, I think we've all had situations where we were stressed or hadn't slept enough, and we became overly reactive to something that someone said to us. And because we became overly reactive, we started an argument, and that argument damaged our relationship to that person, or it damaged our feeling of safety. And therefore, it, as I said, it contributes to your constant re-traumatization, which is something you really want to minimize when you're actually trying to go into the depth of your trauma to heal it. So, proper sleep. I was chronically sleep deprived for years. And I can just say that I now really notice when I haven't gotten proper sleep. Meaning I haven't gotten enough, or I haven't slept well. I can feel it in my body. I can feel it in how cranky I get. And if you've never truly, if you think that you're someone who can function on 4 or 6 hours of sleep, then I promise that there is a version of you that you don't even know, because you aren't allowing that version of you to emerge. I will say that I wasn't only chronically sleep deprived, whatever. Let me know in the chat whichever is correct. I wasn't, not only due to overwork, that was a contributing factor, but mostly due to a lot of anxiety I held in my body. And when you're chronically anxious, obviously it's very difficult to fall asleep at night, because you will be lying in bed, your thoughts will be turning and turning, you will be constantly doing essentially what I did in therapy, thinking about the past, thinking about the present, thinking about the future, and making up problems as you go along. So anxiety management is part of sleep management, but proper sleep is part of anxiety management. But some of the practices I will talk about further down the line today should also help with managing anxiety. Something really practical you can do to help with your sleep is to practice proper sleep hygiene. That means making sure that you have a bedtime routine, that you get enough sunlight during the day, that you get exercise, or at least that you move your body, and that you watch your caffeine intake. At least these were the steps I had to take to ensure that my body was in a space where it could relax in the evening, where it could let go, where it wasn't in that constant stress, and where I could actually rejuvenate, which is what sleep is supposed to do, both for your mind and for your body. Which brings me to the second modality that really helped me heal my childhood trauma, which were different body-based practices. So I didn't want to split this, because I feel like these really belong together. But what I mean by body-based practices is movement and exercise. So by movement, I mean literally moving your body throughout the day, getting up to get tea, but most importantly, taking regular walks, stretching, and other gentle movement types such as yoga or qigong, which are also about energy management, or energetic healing, but I won't go into that today. And which really move the energy and thereby the emotions in your body. And the other part I mentioned that I want to talk about is exercise. So exercise is really anything that gets up your heart rate. And both of these are very important. I feel like when we talk about exercise, we often talk about it, or we mostly talk about it in the context of wanting to lose weight or wanting to achieve a certain type of body, and that this is what exercise is for. And while that can certainly be a goal, like a worthy goal of exercise, and I'm not shaming that, is that in this context, I'm not talking about exercise for the sake of achieving a certain look, but I'm talking about exercise for the sake of letting your body do what it's supposed to do. Which, if you look at our evolutionary history, is movement and is heart elevating movement. So I've been working out for about 8 years. I don't do it every day. I don't do it on the same schedule throughout the year. I actually take a few months off every year for autumn and for winter. This isn't conscious, but just like naturally around, like the less sun there is out, the less I want to do heavy exercises, and I don't force myself to do that. I rather focus on gentle movement during those times. But whatever I do throughout the year, throughout the month, throughout the week, I make sure that I'm moving my body, whether that's taking walks, whether that's doing Pilates or a dance workout or lifting weights, which I don't do as much. I mostly do body weight exercises. But but I make sure that I move my body. And the point here really isn't to mimic someone else's exercise style or movement style, but it's to find something that you can do that you can enjoy. And to remind yourself that this is not something you're forcing yourself to do because you have to achieve a certain look, but that it's something that you get to do because it's something you're not, like sleep, that your body needs to be healthy, and you need your body to be as healthy as you can get it to support your trauma healing journey. And I understand that there are health challenges that you might not have control over. And I'm not talking about that here. I'm not qualified to give any advice on that. But there are habits that you can implement in your daily life to make sure that you are helping your body gain health. So there were sleep, body-based movement, and the third modality I want to mention in the body category is mindfulness. And here we can already see that mindfulness already connects to the group of mind-based modalities or soul-based modalities, because it's really like a cross of all these three. But if you've never heard of mindfulness, then I would describe it as the habit of coming into the present moment. Because if we're honest, most of our lives are spent not in the present moment, but in the past or in the future. And mindfulness is instrumental in returning us to the only thing that is actually real, which is the present moment. To make that more concrete, we can practice a moment of mindfulness right now. It means that you can close your eyes, take a deep breath. I just took a breath, but it was very quick because obviously I'm a bit nervous as I'm on this live, so I'm taking a deeper one now, and you can do it with me. And just notice the sensations in your body, like what is coming up. So for me, I noticed that I have a certain nervous energy in my chest, which is because I'm on this live, but it's also because I drank a cup of coffee earlier today, which I normally don't do. And overall, I can feel like a low level of excitement, but also anxiety. And you can open your eyes now. But what I just did was I became aware of myself in this present moment. And actually feel a bit more calm just from doing this very simple, I don't know, 20-second exercise. And these are moments you can include in your day, which, especially if you're prone to anxiety, will feel like torture. It will feel completely useless. You will ask yourself, why am I even doing this? But trust me, that is your body resisting, that it's shifting out of survival mode. And because when you're in survival mode, the most uncomfortable thing to do is to actually slow down and stop. Because survival mode, meaning your sympathetic nervous system is activated. Is it parasympathetic? Whatever. That the nervous system that is responsible for activating during stress or perceived danger. Thinks that there's like a tiger chasing you. And when there's a tiger chasing you, the last thing you want to do is to slow down, which is exactly why mindfulness is important. Because as pretty much everything I'm going to talk about today, these are habits and mindsets that you have to make, or that I had to make a regular part of my life in order to heal my childhood wounds. And so it isn't enough to do this once right now in this moment, and I'll never feel anxious at the thought of being live again. But rather, I have to check in with myself continuously. And in the beginning, this will be very difficult, but it will get easier and it will get more useful as you do it. So that's for the body-based practices. Are there any comments on that or thoughts? Obviously, this is just the tip of the iceberg I'm mentioning here. Doesn't seem that way. Let me just check. No, so no comments for now. So the second group I want to talk about, the second group of modalities, are the mind-based modalities. And I guess mindfulness was a part of that. As I mentioned, it intersects, and many of these practices intersect and can be grouped into one particular group. It's just that for the sake of helping you remember these practices, I've decided to put them in categories. So the first modality I want to mention from the mind group, and this was extremely important for me, is working on my attachment style. So if you're not familiar with attachment theory, it's a modality that assumes that the way you build relationships as a child with your primary caregivers, that this is the style of relationship that you will emulate as an adult. And I found this to be absolutely true. And so there are two different types of attachment style, namely a secure attachment style, in which you learn as a child that it is safe to connect to other people, that you can have healthy conflict with people, that it's safe to be near them, and that you can trust them with yourself, with your emotions. And then there are insecure attachment styles. So there are 3 of them. And with an insecure attachment style, you didn't learn these lessons, you learned different lessons. And depending on which insecure attachment style you are, you internalize different messages about relationships with other people. So this isn't just about romantic relationships, but this is about relationships with your friends, with your family. It's about relationships with work, with money, with everything. And so the 3 insecure attachment styles are the anxious preoccupied attachment style, the way you didn't learn to soothe yourself, so you're very dependent on other people. Then there's the dismissive avoidance style, which I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I said the first style correctly. So the first style is the anxious preoccupied style. The second style is the dismissive avoidance style, where you didn't learn that it's safe to soothe through other people. So you learn to be very independent, but it also makes you distrustful of relationships and of closeness. And then there's the fearful avoidance style, also called the disorganized attachment style. And this attachment style learned mixed messages. So they oscillate essentially between the anxious preoccupied and the dismissive avoidance style. And this is just the broad overview. And so what had sorry, my roommate's cat just entered the room. So what had happened to me during my childhood is that I had been taught that, subconsciously of course, I had been taught that it's not safe to soothe through other people, and that relationships are very unpredictable. That's because I lived in a very chaotic environment. And so this caused me to have a disorganized attachment style, which made me very distrustful of other people. I felt that in relationships, I always had to fend for myself. At the same time, I really deeply craved connection to other people, romantically, platonically. And but it made that connection feel so painful. And I had actually heard about attachment styles while I was still in therapy. But what I had learned was outdated information, which was essentially that you couldn't change your attachment style. And so when I found out that, and that was also what I learned about attachment styles didn't include disorganized attachment styles. So I read these descriptions of anxious, preoccupied, and dismissive avoidant people, and I found myself in both of these descriptions, but something was missing. And so as I was phasing out of therapy, I had some problems in my romantic relationship, and as I looked up resources on how to fix these problems, I found a YouTube channel called the Personal Development School. And I will link that in the description box. But essentially, this is a YouTube channel entirely dedicated to attachment style theory. And this honestly changed my life. Like, if I could take all the years I'd spent in therapy and instead spend them on studying attachment styles, I think I would be much further along in my healing journey. Because, as I said, the idea that you can't change your attachment style isn't true. You can change your attachment style. I know this because I changed mine, because I used to be a fearful avoidant attachment style, a disorganized attachment style, and now I'm actually secure in my relationships. And I did this through specific programs run by the founder of this personal development school, which is also a platform for online courses. And I'm not affiliated with them in any way. But I highly recommend if my description of attachment theory somehow resonates with you, to check out the channel and to just find out what your attachment style is and to dive into the theory of that, because this seriously changed my life in ways I cannot begin to describe. Like, I would need to make an entire video just about how changing my attachment style changed my life. And what I want to say here is that I know there's been a lot of talk about attachment styles online, but I found a lot of that talk to be very misinformed. And I found it to be disempowering, because I see that a lot of these conversations are about diagnosing other people with for their attachment style and essentially judging them for it. And that's just not what we're doing on our healing journey. That's not what we're doing on this channel. We're focusing on ourselves. We're focusing on what we can do. And that's really how I would recommend using attachment theory. Talking about what we can do, the fifth modality I want to talk about today is personal responsibility, or radical responsibility, which I guess is more a mindset than a modality. But instrumental in my trauma journey was the understanding that I'm responsible for my life, that no one can change myself or my life than me. And that was a tough lesson to learn, because really what I looked for when I entered therapy was for someone to fix me. And I'm ashamed to admit that, because obviously intellectually you know that someone else can fix you. But I truly believe that I was so broken that I needed someone else to put me back together, or put me together, because I assumed that something was lost of me that others were given in childhood and that I just was never given. So I can't point to a specific moment where I understood, oh my God, I'm responsible for everything. but I am responsible for everything. I truly believe that. And just to get this out of the way, responsibility does not mean guilt. People often have a strong reaction to this idea of radical responsibility, that you're responsible for everything in your life, because they think that it means that you're to blame for what happens to you. And I don't believe in that. I don't believe in blame, and I don't believe in. I just don't think it's productive. Like, what do you get by blaming yourself or blaming another person? You get nothing. But what responsibility gives you is power. It empowers you. Because when I understood that I'm responsible for everything, I understood that I'm also an actor in my life. I don't have to depend on others to change for me or to act for me. I can do that myself. And I'd rather be an actor than a victim, which is essentially what you are forcing yourself to be when you give up your responsibility. When you're saying that others are responsible for, I don't know, for healing me, for fixing me, and that's just not, that just I don't believe in that. I've never seen a mindset like that actually help with healing. I've only seen it sabotage healing. So, as I said, responsibility does not equal guilt. Responsibility equals empowerment, and helps you feel more in control of your life. So the sixth modality I want to talk about here is journaling. And if I were to make a top 3 of the most important habits for childhood trauma healing, then journaling would be there. Maybe I should make that top 3. Because again, like with attachment theory, I can't really put into words how much journaling has changed my life. Because as a trauma survivor, your internal dialogue is like, it's constantly running. You're constantly repeating lies you've been told about life, about yourself, about other people in your head. And these lies, no one needs to have taught you these lies consciously, but you were taught these lies. If you're a childhood trauma survivor, then you somehow have the lie within you that you are not worthy of safety or of love. Because when you're a child and you're put into a situation that no child should be put in, you will try to find explanations for what is happening. And because as a child, you do not understand the larger meanings of what is happening around you, that these people are flawed, that there's nothing wrong with you. You will try to find the explanation for your lack of safety or for their lack of support for you. You will try to find that explanation within yourself. And that explanation will be that you are somehow damaged or somehow not worthy. And this belief will constantly repeat within your mind. It will be part of your thoughts. So for me, that looked like, the thoughts of that drove a lot of my achievements. The thought that I needed to achieve more, the thought that I needed to do more, that I needed to prove myself, to prove how hard I could work, how dedicated I was. And this proving energy was really run by the belief that I'm not good enough as I am, that other people can't see that I'm good enough as I am, and that I need to show them. And I didn't know all this because I never put my thoughts on paper. Journaling is really the way to get all these things out of your mind, just to become aware of them, even just to see what you're constantly telling yourself, and to really consider whether what you're telling yourself you would tell someone you love. So I don't know how many years I've been journaling, at least for 5 years. I do it almost every day. With all of these habits, I can't say that I do them every day because I'm human, but I do them most days, or try to do them most days. And so currently I journal every single morning for about 40 minutes because I tend to have a lot to say, as you probably noticed. But what I really encourage you is to just start. And you don't need anything fancy. You don't need a fancy pen. You don't need a fancy journal. You can literally take a sheet of printer paper in journal. And if you make this a habit, you will see, like, first you will begin to recognize your thought patterns. And self-awareness is key in everything, especially in childhood trauma healing. And you will also notice that these thoughts, the more you put them on paper, the more they will stay on paper. And yeah, it's just something I didn't believe was possible, but again, can now say is possible, no matter what you believe, whether you believe it is. Which brings me to the third group, third group of modalities that really helped me heal my childhood trauma when therapy couldn't. And that is the group I've called soul, or spirituality. And here, just like journaling, if I were to make a top 3, then I would definitely put meditation in that top 3. I've been meditating for about 7 years now. And it is, again, such a life-changing habit that it's difficult to put into words. Again, this is something I could make an entire video. But essentially, if you've never really engaged with meditation, then you might think that it means that you must sit like with crossed legs on the floor and think about nothing. And that is certainly a form of meditation, but it's not the only form of meditation. And there are so many forms that I can't go into all of them. But I will say that I started my meditation journey when I had the aforementioned sleep problems. I was looking for guided sleep meditations. And so I started doing these nightly. And while they didn't always help me, fall asleep immediately, they helped me become aware of the thought patterns I just mentioned. And they helped me become aware of how there was never a silent moment in my mind, how I was constantly bombarding myself with thoughts about the past and about the future, and none of them productive. So again, meditation helped with the self-awareness. And then as I practiced it more, it also helped calm my mind, because I became more used to being in the moment, and to being okay with being in the moment, even if the moment wasn't perfect. And as I mentioned, I did a lot of guided sleep meditations, which means that I did, and I still do, like 90% of my meditations lying in bed with closed eyes. But really, you can meditate anywhere. And what we did earlier, this little mindfulness moment, that was already like a mini meditation. So I used to do these all the time on the bus when I was commuting to university. And again, if you make this a habit, and even if you start by doing it for 2 minutes a day, or maybe just 2 minutes today, you will become aware that you are not your thoughts. And this could be like another point on this modalities list, but this video is already getting long. And this realization that you are not your thoughts empowers you to also question your thoughts. Because a friend of mine summarized this very well. Because essentially, we believe that just because we think something, it's true. But most of what we think is just old and repeated. So essentially, what you're telling yourself the entire time in your head, maybe that you don't work enough, or that you're not good enough, or maybe that you have to prove yourself, or that everybody's thinking this and that about you. That isn't true just because it's in your head. But it's in your head because at some point in your life you learned this. And that could have been 20 years ago. But if you don't become aware of this tape that's constantly running at the back of your mind, then you can change it. Which is where journaling and meditation actually really intersect. So if you practice both of these together, then you will become very self-aware, and you will become very active in shaping your thoughts, which is one of the most empowering things you can do. So, one last sip, if there's any thoughts on that. Yeah, and I will actually combine the last two modalities, which really helped me heal my childhood trauma. And these are inner child work and shadow work. And both of these modalities assume that there are different parts of you. And inner child work assumes that there is like a part of you that is a child, right? That is your child self, and that this part is very much alive in you today. So to make this more make this more practical, I sometimes get very nervous opening my work email because I fear, like at the back of my mind, I will have this fear that I will open my work email and I will see an angry email by my boss because I don't know, I messed something up, I forgot something. And this is like such a repeating fear of mine that I notice it. And at some point, I realized that I was afraid of this because as a child, I was criticized a lot. And often I didn't understand what I was criticized for. So I kind of internalized this idea that there is something that I'm messing up that I'm not aware of, and that someone will berate me for. And so when I get anxious opening my work email, because that's like 20 years ago, right? Or what I just described. When I get anxious opening my work email, this is actually the child part of myself that is still in here, that is scared of being criticized and of being attacked for something that she didn't realize she did wrong. And I will describe how to work with this after I've described shadow work, which again is a modality that assumes that there are different parts of yourself, namely that there are parts of yourself that you have repressed. And but that these parts of yourself that you have repressed are somehow acting up within you. For a very like one of the strongest ways in which shadows show up in your life is when you project onto other people. So oftentimes something that makes you very angry in another person is actually a part of yourself that you have repressed. To make an example, so there's a person in my life who is very outspoken about their opinion, and they will let their opinion be known, whether you want it or not. And this sometimes really gets on my nerves. Like I'm often like, why can't they read the room better? Why can't they, just withhold that part of themselves that needs to express themselves so badly? And while I'm certainly for reading the room and being sensitive to other people, at some point I asked myself, why am I so sensitive to this? Why does this enrage me so much? And I realized it's because I actually have problems expressing my opinion. As I mentioned, I fear criticism, and therefore I will often hold myself back and not allow myself to speak my opinion, because I fear that criticism. I fear being rejected for who I am. And this person in my life doesn't seem to have that problem. Right? And so because I cannot allow myself to express myself, I'm asking myself, why, if I'm doing this to myself, if I'm having so much pain over this, why can't you do me the favor of holding yourself back? So essentially what I want them to do subconsciously is to do to themselves what I'm doing to myself. And that's just not healthy, right? So there are lots of different shadow work practices you can do, lots of different inner child work. It's like an entire world, again, entire videos could be made on that. And what I really, how these two modalities really help me is to understand that I am not just who I think I am. This goes back to the you're not what you think. But rather that I'm much more complex, and that there are parts of me that I do not understand, and that I might never understand. But that these still deserve to be recognized. And this is part of of learning to love yourself and of learning to heal your trauma is to see that there are parts of yourself that you might not want to acknowledge or that you might not feel like you can acknowledge. And these parts of yourself will come to the surface as you heal your trauma, because part of trauma is repressing the parts of ourselves that we do not deem acceptable. So in recent months, I've been learning a lot about my relationship to creativity, because I used to be a very creative child. I wrote fiction all the time, but because that part of myself was not really acknowledged in the way I needed it to, I learned to hide it, and I learned that this was not valuable, or that this was not valued rather by the people around me, and therefore I tried to repress it, and I tried to pour the energy I poured into these creative pursuits into more productive things. And through inner child work, through shadow work, I'm reclaiming this creative part of myself. And I couldn't do that if I didn't first acknowledge that it exists. So these are the 9 modalities I mentioned. I don't know if there are any questions or comments. I will say that if I had to create like a top 3 of habits, because some of these things I mentioned are habits, some of these are mindsets. If I had to create a top 3 of habits to practice to heal childhood trauma, I would really say first, proper sleep. Because if you don't sleep enough, then like you're wasting 80% of your energy. So proper sleep, meditation, and journaling. And I would also add movement. I know that top 3 lists are nicer, but sometimes, sometimes things aren't perfect. And movement is really key, because if you're traumatized, that means your body is traumatized. And because your mind comes from your body, you cannot heal your traumatized mind by ignoring the body. It's just not possible. So yeah, these are my thoughts. Again, if you have any thoughts or questions, please type them in the chat. I also feel like, because I know last time someone had trouble like writing in the chat, I'm just like seeing whether I can like unlock it. Let me see that. Can't really see the option right now. So next time, I think I will just make the chat open to everyone, not just my subscribers. Since we're not too many yet, so I don't feel too unsafe opening it to everyone. Yeah, so these are the 9 modalities that really helped me heal my childhood trauma when therapy couldn't. And let me know your thoughts. Let me know what topics you're interested in, if there's anything I talked about in last week's live or during this live that you want me to go into further. And if you're interested in this topic, then make sure to subscribe to my channel, or also to subscribe to my newsletter, where I talk about how to create a holistically successful life as a childhood trauma survivor. Thank you for your attention, and we'll see each other soon.